It's time to pull those belts tight, race fans. The front stretch is coming at you, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Now, here's Dan Taylor and Dirk Houston.
This is Austin Dillon, driver number 3, Dow Chevrolet, and you're listening to The Front Stretch.
Well, good morning to you, race fans, and welcome to The Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting at Council Bluffs, online at joeskarting.com. Get over to Joe's today, do a little bit of racing, and you have an opportunity to win a Hammerhead ATV. They're doing that drawing December 7th, and for every $20 that you drop into the Hammerhead ATV races, you get an entry into the drawing, and you get 16 laps on racing. So you get to go down and have a good time, and while you're down there having fun, you can win yourself this up to $3,000 valued ATV. This thing looks pretty cool, and if you go over to the Joe's Karting Facebook page, they've got a bunch of videos of the cart, pictures of it, and how the whole contest works, but it's really easy. You're going to go over to Joe's Karting and do a little bit of racing anyways, so just make sure you ask for the Hammerhead ATV races, and you'll get entered into that drawing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go race, you might as well go for the big stuff. You know, you can't win if you don't play.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to go over to Joe's Karting. We've been talking about it for, going on 6 years about how Joe's Karting is a place to go. Everybody knows about it. I am telling you, everybody knows about it. Quit waiting around and get over to Joe's Karting today and do a little bit of racing. Let's talk about a little bit of racing. We saw some at Loudon for the New Hampshire race. What was the official title of that race? Because they threw that on there at the last minute. It was the Bad Boy Off-Road 300. There we go. Normally that stuff comes out months ahead of time, but it came out like a week and a half before, and I thought, well, that was a late sponsorship.
Did they even have the off-road on there? I just kept remembering hearing Bad Boy 300. That's all I heard all day.
Well, I think that was a part of the problem, was that they released it so late that it was the Bad Boy, officially from NASCAR, it was the Bad Boy Off-Road 300, but they kept calling it the Bad Boy 300, so it was those off-road buggies that, God, those things, I would love to get my hands on one of those.
I mean, they sponsor Shots, a sprint car, don't they? Isn't that a Bad Boy buggy?
Yeah. Bad Boy sponsors a lot of dirt stuff, and it's nice to see them kind of getting up into NASCAR a little bit without the fear of losing anything down in the dirt series. But they sponsor a bunch of races and a couple of teams and various stuff like that. But there's a lot of money in those Bad Boy buggies. Holy cow, that company is just absolutely loaded. The race from Sunday, Dirk, walk me through your takeaway Sunday at New Hampshire. Were you surprised in it? Who ended up winning that race?
Not really surprised. I mean, guys fast all the time. You know, they didn't shoot themselves on the foot on pit road. You know, so they stayed up front. There was some of that. Guys going in streaks. You know, guys. I think a couple of the guys kind of adjusted themselves out of the wind.
Yeah.
And then it got to be a little bit of strategy towards the end on who was going to have good tires and stuff like that. And restarts played a big part, but there wasn't anything really questionable on the restarts.
Speaking of those restarts, there was a little bit of conversation that second to last restart where Kenseth had control and Truex was to his inside. Did you see anything funny with Kenseth going on there?
Well, it looks like Kenseth had a little brake check maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then Martin took off, and, they did penalize Martin on that one, did they not? I believe they did.
They didn't. They ended up not finding anything, but Harvick was the first one that came over the radio that NBC broadcast and said that who'd they penalize, the 20 or the 78? Because they were both jacking around there on the start. So who'd they penalize? And that's Kevin's way of saying, NASCAR, you want to take a look at this? Because that was funny. And to Matt's point, he said, listen, I was continuing my pace because officially the rule is, and I think the guys on NBC covered this, was that when the pace car peels off, you must maintain pace speed. You don't slow up, you don't speed up. You don't speed up or slow down. That's called jackrabbiting the restart, and drivers hate it when the leader does that because they can't figure out when to go. The rule is, once you get into the restart box, the leader has from the start of the restart box to the end of the restart box to go hammer down and go into the corner. He burps the throttle, that's a go button, and the rest of the field will go right by him. Matt said that I was maintaining speed. He said that Truex was trying to catch up to me and just went right past me. He goes, well, of course, when we get into the restart zone and Truex is in front of me, of course I'm not going to go then because it gives him an advantage. So he waited for Truex to get out of the throttle before he went, which made it look like Matt was jackrabbiting the restart.
Well, he'd been nailing right at the line on all the other restarts. This time he didn't do that because Truex thought that's what he was going to do, and Truex was trying to time it. And so when Matt didn't nail it right at the line, it made everybody look silly.
This is probably a good question for maybe this weekend at the Cornhusker Classic, because there'll be plenty of racing going on at I-80 Speedway. For that two-day event, if drivers hate this games. Is it gamesmanship or is it tricks when it comes to these restarts? Because I think one of the guys we always talk about with Jack Dover, I think he's one of the best at restarts. Because he changes up his cadence a lot. You know, with it being NFL season, they talk about a quarterback's cadence when he gets to the line, that linemen can figure out when he is going to hike it because of his cadence on his voice and how he calls it. And it's the same thing. Other drivers can figure out when you're going to go if you continuously, like you said with Matt, he was going right at the line. Well, that's an easy giveaway. I'll just wait till we get to the line and I'll go too, and maybe it won't be that bad and I'll stay dead even with him going to the corner. So I wonder if they count that, is that gamesmanship or is that tricks?
It's legal, so it's not really a trick, But
I think we've talked about legal things in this sport can be exploited to no end.
It only makes a difference now that it's double file restarts. Before, when it was a single file restart and you couldn't pass to the inside, the leader went to the wall and could go as fast as he wanted to the start-finish line, and nobody could do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's where you'd see the brake checking and some of that stuff going on, and you still see some of that now with the 2 wide, and that's what they were probably maybe took a look at Matt on. Since he didn't go, it almost looked like maybe he did pop the brakes real quick.
Yep.
But his whole line was going the same. They didn't stack up. Now, the inside line did stack up when Martin let off to let Matt go back by him.
Refresh my memory. I think there was an issue with Tony Stewart and another driver maybe a year, 2 years, 3 years ago where they went, I think it was Carl Edwards. The restart happened. This was back before they had the restart zone. Well, they highlighted the restart zone. They've had the restart zone for a long time. But Carl went thinking Tony was going, and Tony he just didn't even go. He didn't even restart the race. I mean, he was supposed to, but because Carl took off, Tony's just like, well, I'm not going to go, or at least I'm going to go really slowly, and it makes it. And then I think Carl got black flagged for it and sent he had to do a pass-through penalty. So there is gamesmanship with these guys to trick one another, because you got to take every advantage. When you're talking about 11.5-second pit stops, and these cars are so even, it comes down to driver talent and engineering, and you got to find everything you possibly can. Which one of the things we're going to talk to, and I didn't do a show preview when we kicked off the show, so I apologize. Coming up in Turn 2, we're going to talk with Kyle Petty, who is the NBC analyst and NASCAR America coverage weekdays for NBCSN. We're going to talk to him. One of the things I want to talk to Kyle about is the 11 speeding penalties at Richmond, 10 speeding penalties at Chicago, and a big fat goose egg. There wasn't a single speeding penalty at New Hampshire. That tells me that teams finally got the message. Okay, we've been slapped on the hand. It really did hurt us. It put us back. Or did NASCAR do something else with the time? Did they tell them where the timing lines were at? Did they show them where all this stuff was at? Did they give them the teams more information to now the teams are able to start exploiting it to their advantage to where now they're not getting caught again? So that'll be one thing we'll ask Kyle. But that was one thing that stuck out with me when they were talking about that the broadcast in New Hampshire was not a single speeding penalty.
No. First of all, I think your problem is your mind's still probably boggled from that Trump rally you attended yesterday. So that might be why you're a little boggled there.
I love me some Trump.
But the pit road penalties, I mean, the last 2 years, that's how they've gone. You'll see a bunch one race, then you won't see much for 1 or 2 weeks. And there's going to be a bunch of them again here. About the time we get to go to Kansas, we should see another batch of them.
There you go. Results from New Hampshire. Kevin Harvick got the win off of a great restart. That would end up being the final restart between, I think Matt Kenseth had the lead. He was in control, but Kevin timed it perfectly, got down into the corner and was able to hold with Matt and able to pull away from him through the backstretch. A great restart for Kevin, and then Matt Kenseth ended up finishing runner-up. Kyle Busch third. He had the best of the rest for the tires. He was one of the final guys to come down and get 4 when I think it was 2 or 3 pit stops before that. He had much better tires than Kenseth and Harvick did, but he just wasn't able to do anything with it. It really felt like his car took 4 or 5 laps to come to him.
Well, and Carl ended up in 5th. Carl had good tires. He had just been in one of those last restarts from like the 12th or 14th spot, but a bunch of people came behind him and a couple came in front of him, so he didn't lose any spots. And he got to work his way up there a little bit. But Carl was lost all day. For a car that had the pole position and was fast, I think it was fastest in the first practice, man, race time came and he was just out to lunch.
Yeah, and there was a couple of guys like that. Keselowski ended up finishing 4th. Kurt Busch ended up finishing 5th. then Edwards, Truex, Johnson, Kane, and Larson. I was really surprised at Larson. I didn't see much of him during the entire New Hampshire race. For a guy who swept all 3 practices, and where did he end up? He started 6th. You would have expected him to be a major contender in this race, but he just, not that he didn't do good, I just didn't see a lot of him.
Yeah, I mean, you just didn't hear him when he was there. It was only a couple times, I think. He ended up, close to the front. Did he lead a lap? I don't even know if he led a lap or not. He was up front for a little bit,
no.
Running towards the front during some of the cycles at pit stops. But, he just kind of one of them races for him, even though, like I said, he still got decent results.
Yeah.
He didn't finish in the back or anything. He stayed out of trouble, which for him is half the battle.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He likes to put his nose where it doesn't belong or where it can't fit, I guess, probably better.
Chris Buescher, the worst of the chase finishers, came home in 30th. Then it was Tony Stewart in 23rd. Austin Dillon in 16th. Denny Hamlin 15th. Chase Elliott 13th place finish. So quite a few of those guys. Tough. I wish Chris could put up a little bit more of a fight, but that's a team that just wasn't ready to make the chase.
Well, I mean, they won.
They may never. I mean, we don't know. 5 years from now, we could talk about them being the next Furniture Row Racing organization, where they're a single car organization, about ready to expand to 2 cars. They're dominating. They've got an amazing driver who just signed on for another extension, but for now, they're overwhelmed.
Well, I believe they get their motors through the Roush Penske deal that they've got set up with Ford. But as far as that goes, I mean, you don't know anybody that's with these outfits. They're not a super high dollar outfit, but they're there every week, and they're putting out an effort. I hope we can work it out and get to talk to Chris down in Kansas. We've had him on the show a couple different times. It'd be nice to talk to him and talk to him about his chase experience and what he went through mentally to try and help himself out with that.
I missed one. Jamie McMurray ended up finishing 19th. He's one of the other chase contenders. But yes, I did put in the request for Chris, so hopefully we'll hear back from his people shortly. We had a great interview with Chris back in May, and I mean, this was just simply my planning mistake. We got so busy with May and June, July, August dirt racing that we didn't really take the proper time to play that interview. By the time we've gotten around to playing it, I was listening to it the other day. Well, it's great information. It's 10 races into the season, and a lot has changed since then. So it really wasn't a good interview to play. It really wouldn't be very relevant right now. So we're just going to do it over again in October.
Well, it might be a nice show though if we are able to talk to him. If we can play the first interview and just back it up with the second one, right?
That could be that. Yeah, maybe play back and forth between the. Yeah, ask him similar questions and see what his thought change has been. Good idea, Dirk. That's why you're on this show. Before we wrap up our New Hampshire cover, let's talk about the chase. Obviously, going into Dover today is an elimination race. 4 drivers will end their 2016 championship hopes. They will continue to be in the top, the 16th through 13th, but they're not going to be able to compete for the championship anymore. Chris Buescher is the worst of them, and I say that with a little bit of a chagrin. It's like we just talked about. It's hard to say that. He's 30 points behind 12th, and Tony Stewart 11 points back. He's in 15th. Austin Dillon 5 points back. Jamie McMurray 5 points back. Kyle Larson right there on the bubble. He is 12th. He would be the final car to transfer if nothing happened at Dover. He is 5 points above the cut line, which is 13th, Jamie McMurray. Kurt Busch is 15 points ahead. A little bit more secure run for him. He's just got to make sure and stay 20 positions in front of Jamie McMurray or 20.
No, stay within 20 positions of Jamie McMurray.
Right. You're right.
Not in front of him.
Not in front of, right. Carl Edwards, 16 points ahead of the cut line. He's in 10th. Chase Elliott in 9th. He's also 16 points. Jimmy Johnson, 18 points ahead in 8th. Denny Hamlin, 19 points ahead in 7th. Then Joey Logano, 21 points ahead in 6th. Matt Kenseth, 26 points ahead. Kyle Busch, 33 points ahead. Kyle had an interesting comment that really kind of made me look back at that and understand. They asked him post-race if he felt comfortable having a 33-point lead going into Dover, and he said, and I'm not quoting him here, but this is basically what he said, you never feel comfortable with a 33-point lead Last year, the 48 team went to Dover with a 27-point lead over over 13th place, had a small parts failure, and ended up being one of the cars that got eliminated.
Yep, that's exactly what he said. He
Was
said,
it
no, I'm not comfortable with 33 points.
And you shouldn't be. I mean, even Brad Keselowski in 35th. Now, granted, he's just got to finish 35th or better, and he's into the chase, or he's into the next round. But even then, I mean, you never know. With an organization like Hendrick, and one thing I've always applauded these guys is that when the chase is on, they're always on their game about having crash carts ready to go. They have all this stuff planned out for any contingency. And I can't remember what the part was. I tried to go back and find it, but I couldn't find it off the little research I had time to do. But I remember it was something with the rear end hub, or it was just like this weird little parts failure that they weren't able to get it changed at the race, and so they ended up they weren't able to get it changed quick enough to be able to salvage any kind of a day and move on. Their day was done, and they went to the back, and that was it. So a talented driver like Jimmy Johnson, who was having a great year last year, and I think he went on to win 2 races through the rest of the chase, but it was all for naught because he got eliminated in round number 1. So we'll see that today at Dover, that there's probably going to be a lot of tension with these guys because everybody is running so good right now. I think Chris is one of those guys that he can't put together a good run and win. He can't put together a top 10 and move on to the chase. He's dug himself into too big of a hole with the first 2 races of the round.
Well, he's got to win. I mean,
yeah,
basically he's got to win, and basically Tony Stewart's got to win.
And that's shocking to say. With just 11-point deficit to 12th place, he's going to need a lot of help to get past Austin Dillon and Jamie McMurray. And he's not very happy with
anything.
Absolutely. We'll talk about his comments maybe in turn 4 if we've got time. Speaking of got time, we are 17 minutes in, so we got to take a break. We'll come back. Kyle Petty will be on the phone in turn number 2. Then Ken Schrader will join us in turn number 3. Ken's been confirmed for the Cornhusker Classic this coming Friday and Saturday at I-80 Speedway, so make sure and get out there and support Ken and support I-80 Speedway in the final dirt race for I-80 Speedway this year. Turn number 4, we will preview Dover, and we'll preview Charlotte because Charlotte's Saturday night, so we'll be live next Sunday. All right, we'll be back here on the front stretch.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
And we're back with Kansas Speedway, who is still sorry.
That's right. I'm, really sorry to the coworkers of my fans who have to listen to all that loud talking on Monday. And sorry my drink prices won't turn your weekend into a loan application. And sorry the chase for the championship is more exciting than your last date.
The chase is on as the Sprint Cup Series Championship rolls in Sunday, October 16th for the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
You're welcome.
We're hooked up in turn 2 and still showing the green flag on the front stretch.
Hi, Dave Despain with MAV TV, which is your television destination if you're looking for motorsports. Radio, you found it. You're listening to the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Heading into turn number 2, brought to you by Kansas Speedway. Tickets for the Hollywood Casino 400 the Hollywood Casino 400, October 16th. They're available now. Call 866-460-RACE or visit kansasspeedway.com. One guy that will be at Kansas Speedway for the pre- and post-race coverage, as he is an analyst for NBC Sports and NBC SN, and one of the co-hosts for NASCAR America, Kyle Petty, joining us on the phone. How you doing, Kyle?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Well, I'm getting a little tripped up on my sponsor read, so hopefully I can tighten things up a little bit, and we can have a much smoother interview.
That's bad when you're a driver. You've got to mention the sponsors, man. Get that part right. You messed up everything else, just get the sponsors right.
I feel like some of those drivers that are going to be racing on today at Dover with the car kind of breaking loose a little bit. Those words were breaking loose on me.
That's for sure.
Was that a good analysis?
That was a great analysis.
Was that good?
You're learning.
I'm just a fan. My co-host apparently apparently tried to DQ you your final Cup race.
That's not anywhere near what happened. But
he's a former Camping World Truck Series official, and apparently you were on his pit for his last race.
Yeah, my last race, Kyle, I worked my last Sprint Cup race I worked was 2004 in Martinsville, and I was working your pit. That was the day the track broke up, and we had fire suits on for like 7 or 8 hours or something crazy like that.
That was crazy. That was a crazy day, man. There, you look back on the stuff that's happened, track tearing up, Daytona, the track tearing up, and stuff like that. There's been some weird stuff that has happened in this sport over the 60 or 70 years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And obviously, I think the top of the list would be poor old Juan Pablo Montoya hitting the jet dryer. Nowhere near his fault or anything he could do about it, but that guy, he's going to go down in the history books as probably one of the weirdest things.
Yeah, one of the weirdest things ever. That is for sure. That's in the top 2 or 3 for sure.
Well, Kyle, a lot of conversation since Pocono has been pit road speeding penalties, as NASCAR has nabbed a lot of drivers with the extra timing lines. I was really surprised at New Hampshire to see 0 speeding penalties. From the guy who was at the track, what was the sudden change?
Too much on the line, man. Too much on the line. I think we saw it at Chicagoland. There's Jimmy Johnson with a speeding penalty late in the race, and it relegated him really back to where I felt like he had a top 5 or 6 car, relegated him back to 12th or 13th. And if that happens to you at New Hampshire is like a road course. You can't make up position. We saw it late in the race when the one car of Jamie McMurray pitted from 16th, and as far as he could get back to was 19th, and he started 21st. He passed 2 cars in the last 4 or 5 laps of the race. You just can't make up time at a place like New Hampshire. At a place where you can make up time, we'll go back to seeing penalties on pit road because these guys are going to test it a little bit. But a place like New Hampshire, a place like Martinsville, I doubt with penalties.
Yeah, we were discussing this before you came on, and I've noticed over the years since they've started the pit road speeding penalties, they seem to go in clumps. You'll get a race where there is, like Chicagoland, I think we had 10 of them, and then you'll go 1 or 2 races, there won't be any. And then, boom, there's going to be another big clump of them, one race again, and that kind of where you just kind of made your comment, that fits right into what I was saying, just, and saying it a different way.
Yeah, and it honestly, it depends on the racetrack. It's risk versus reward is what it is. And the risk on pit road at a New Hampshire or a Martinsville or one of the road courses that we run, the reward is nil almost because you may pick up 2 or 3 positions. But if you're busted and they send you to the back, remember, these are racetracks where there's always 25 or 30 cars on the lead lap, and it's tough to get back to the front.
There's so much to be gained on pit road when you can do it right. NASCAR kind of came out earlier this week and said they were exploring eliminating one over-the-wall crewman for the 2017 season. Do you think that is going to level out the playing field a little bit more to where there's not going to be such an advantage if they're picking up a 10th or 2/10 on pit road?
No. They could send. Let me tell you. They could say you've got one crew member. He's got to change 4 tires, fuel the car, clean the windshield, service the driver, and these teams are still going to find a way around that rule and around beating it in some way, shape, or form. So it's not going to level the playing field by any stretch of the imagination. It just creates another field that these guys will eventually master. We've seen them in the past. Every time they change a rule. And we can talk about the laser system and all that stuff. They change the rule, they bust them on it, and what do? They find a way around it, and now NASCAR's changed the rule again. So that's what is so. One of the parts I love about this sport is it's you against the 40 other competitors, but it's you against the rule book too in a lot of ways, and trying to figure out how to game the rule book and trying to figure out how to get around the rules that are there, and not blatantly bust them, but just push them, just push that boundary just a little bit. And that's what I say about pit road. You got to understand this. When you get caught on pit road and they say, okay, that was, you were 0.2 over the limit, and that sounds like nothing. But remember, they give you a 5-mile-an-hour grace period. Mm-hmm. So really you were 5 limit, not just 2 over the limit. So they give you a little squirm, a little wiggle room in almost every rule they have. But these guys, I don't care what they do on pit road. These guys will figure out a way around it.
Yeah, well, when you get these pit road speeding penalties, though, I mean, I've been around the racing for a long time, and it's a huge safety deal. I mean, it got so much nicer to walk out there when you had, a 35-mile-an-hour pit road speed at Martinsville than before that.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I used to carry tires for my dad back in the 70s when I was 16, 17, 18 years old before I started driving a race car. And, when they first started this stuff, I said, look, we can fix this. It's incredibly simple. Have every driver go out, kneel down in the middle of the pit road with their back to the main lane, and then have a guy drive by them at about 160 miles an hour and see if that doesn't take their breath.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what it was like on pit road. That's what it was like on pit road. You had guys coming down pit road at 80, 90, 100 miles an hour, 120 at places like Talladega and Daytona, and you were on your knees, taking a tire off a car or running around the front of the car with two 70-pound tires in your hand, and it would take your breath. Those guys never did get enough credit for what they do on pit road.
And to give listeners an idea of what you guys are talking about, because both of you have been on pit road, I never have. You ever had a tire blow on the interstate and you've had to pull off and change it? That is probably the scariest half hour of my life, and that is the fastest I have ever changed a tire in my life, because one of those semis goes whipping by you, and there's 6 feet between your truck and that semi, but it feels like 6 inches. And, I mean, the wind whips you back and forth. I mean, it really is. It'll put the fear of God in you.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Let's talk about some of these body modifications. I'm hearing a lot of this year. Maybe I missed it last year and the years before, but I'm hearing a lot of drivers get caught with illegal body modifications pre-race. What are these guys doing?
Anything they can. We see them, and there's so much talk about the skew in the rear end and how they run the skew in the rear of the car to really have the car almost crab going down the body-wise, almost crab going down the straightaways, and anything you can do to the right side of the car especially, to that right rear corner, to that right rear C-post, to the top of the deck lid, to the side of the side skirt. A year ago, 2 years ago, we got into every time there was a pit stop, these guys were pulling the side skirts out because they look like wings going down the straightaway on the side of the car. And it's all about downforce. It's all about downforce and stability for the driver when you get in certain situations. They've gone to the lower downforce package, but these drivers got used to driving that higher downforce package. So you want to get back to where you were. And when NASCAR takes something away, you try to gain it in other ways. And whether that, you saw a couple of weeks ago, Jimmy Johnson, his team caved in the top of the quarter panel on a pit stop. We've seen these guys hip check the cars right in front of the right rear tire, give that in to give a little bit of flair in the quarter. And these guys they're just, again, it's chase time, man, and so many people are pushing the boundaries. And even though we want to talk about the 16 chasers, there's guys back there in 28th or 29th or 30th that are trying to stay into that top 30 in points because that's where the money's at. So there's a lot of different games going on and a lot of different races going on inside one race.
Yeah, and I know I've talked to some of my officials buddies, and you see some of the stuff on the pit stops, like you were saying, the hip checks and stuff. But he says now they've really cracked down just on the car sitting out there in the lineup, and a guy going over and just leaning on the car trying to cave it in, just with his body weight. So they've got the guys staying away from the cars altogether.
Yeah. Once it goes through inspection, goes through the laser, they have been really good, and I give NASCAR huge kudos for that. Keeping fans away, keeping people away. Only allowing the driver to get in the car and not allowing guys to go and add more tape or take some tape off or bean on something or lean on something. It's not like it used to be. We used to see Dale Earnhardt Sr. and my dad and those guys asleep on the hood of the cars before they'd go out to qualify. You know what I mean? It's not anything like that. It's totally changed.
And like you said, kudos to NASCAR. I mean, when you go down to Kansas Speedway for this Hollywood Casino 400 coming up here just shortly, the amount of people that are down on the pit lane and in the pits pre-race to be able to keep that circus away from the cars to make sure the cars are still legal and nothing that the team's fault. I mean, that's a tall order.
Yeah, that's a huge order. When you get that many people coming out of the grandstands and that many people in the garage area in the pit, and you're trying to keep a secure area right in the middle of all of them, it's crazy. It's about like protecting Justin Bieber. It can't be done.
Well, it can't be done or shouldn't be done. Which?
Okay, I'll give you shouldn't be done.
We've actually got a contest going here through the radio show. We do some fantasy racing league stuff, and we've got a little 5-week contest that actually ends this week. And the winner of our contest is going to get to be a crewman with Brendan Gaughan down at the Xfinity race in Kansas for the day. Obviously, they won't get to go over the wall or anything like that, but they're going to get a crew shirt, and they're going to get to go through the tech experience before qualifying and hang out on the pit box during qualifying, during the race, get a radio. It's going to be a good experience for somebody.
You just nailed it right there. As long as they let them have a radio, it'll be a blast because there's nobody better on the radio and has more fun driving a race car than Brendan Gault. So it will be well worth whoever wins this to just sit and listen to him on the radio.
He tried to tell us one time that he never gets upset on the radio.
No, I know that ain't right.
Yeah, I know that ain't right either, but I'm going to tell you.
There's no such thing.
But he makes fun of everybody out there, too, and that's the best part.
Well, and if he would happen to win the race, that boy gets so excited in victory lane. Oh, man, that'll be an experience for somebody if he would pull off a win.
Yeah, that would be an experience.
We're about to eliminate 4 drivers from the chase. The first round of 16 has all been, for most of these drivers, has been keep your nose clean, have a good run, and we'll survive to the next round. We go into the round of 12, which is Talladega, Kansas, and Charlotte. That's going to be the whole attitude for the chase changes at that point, right?
Yeah, this is the part I like about the chase. I don't like everything about the chase, but the part I do like about it is the elimination. We start with 16, and by the time we get to the second round, 12, and those 12 know there's only going to be 8 that survive that round, and the pressure ramps up. It ramps up from the first to the second. And from the second to the third, it's incredible. The tension in the garage area, you can just cut it. But the second round, because we have Talladega in that second round, it's crazy, man, because those guys know going into Talladega, it's really not a 3-race round. It's a 2-race round that they can control. They can control Kansas. They can control Charlotte. They can control some of these places. But Talladega is out of your control. Something can happen, something not of your making, and we have seen the big one down there so many times that take people out that are just riding around trying to make it to the end of the race and trying to put themselves in position to move on to the second round. So second round for me is always the tense one. You kind of know what's going to happen by the time you get to the third round. I kind of do anyhow. You kind of know who the cream of the crop is and who the guys that you think, and there may be a surprise in there that somebody does bust into that final group, but the second round of this thing, once we eliminate 4 from this one, going into Charlotte next week is going to be exciting.
Yeah, we're really excited around here because starting in 2017, they're going to make Kansas is going to be an elimination race. They're switching dates with Talladega, and so that's going to, we think that'll really up the excitement in the area for that Kansas race.
Yeah, and the drivers think that too. I can tell you that straight up because the drivers want that elimination race to be a race they can control, not a race that's just a roll of the dice. You know what I mean? They want to be able to if they make a mistake, it's on them. But if somebody else makes a mistake, they don't want to drive home or fly home or get back home and think, what if this guy hadn't done that? What if this hadn't happened? It's okay. You can deal with it better when it's on you than when it's somebody else's fault.
We've been talking with Kyle Petty of NBCSN. You can catch him on the pre-race and post-race show today for Dover, and then you can catch him for Saturday night at Charlotte as we'll be under the lights at Charlotte. I got 2 more questions if we have time, Kyle.
Yeah, cool. Keep going.
Brian France said that they've been looking to add or they're wanting to add another manufacturer to the sport. Do you have any kind of idea, maybe not insider information, but anybody that could be coming into the sport or maybe back into the sport?
No, not really. I think, honestly, Dodge, and they've pretty much said publicly that it's not on their radar screen. There was rumblings a couple of years ago, honestly, and with Andretti Motorsports and a couple of teams that are in the Cup Series talking to VW and with the world of the global rallycross and some of that stuff, Michael has a team there that Tanner Faust drives for. That's a VW team. So, I don't think anything's out of the question. I think once Toyota came and they saw how it was played, and as if we go back through sports car racing and we go back through racing worldwide, it seems like if Toyota's there, Honda and Nissan eventually find their way in at some point in time. So, I know that Brian would like to add. I think we would all like to add. I started at a time. This is the crazy part. I started at a time when you had really there was Dodge and there was Ford and there was Mercury and there was Oldsmobile and there was Buick and there was Pontiac and there was Chevy. You had you had all the nameplates, but the nameplates have been consolidated, and so much in the automobile business has been consolidated. You look at Toyota, you look at Ford, you look at Chevy. Those are the main players right now in our group. But I do believe there is room for 1 or 2 more, or 3 or 4 more, whoever wants to come in. And I know that there have been talks at different times, but I don't know what's going on now.
Yeah, I know. I was still working when when Toyota came into the Truck Series, and I know there was a lot of speculation, 10 years ago, that Honda or Nissan was going to be right behind on their heels, but hasn't showed up yet.
Yeah, hadn't shown up yet, but hey, you never know, man. You never know. When the way Toyota's running now, that may force these guys to come here and try something.
The last question we've got for you, we've asked a lot of different people within the sport this question, and it's not necessarily something's wrong with the sport. It's what would you like to change about racing or NASCAR in general? If you could play, not even Brian France, president of NASCAR, if you could play the god of racing and you could change anything with physics be damned, what would you change about racing that you think it would make it better?
That's a good question. Whatever you do has to make the racing better on the racetrack, because that's all we have. At the end of the day, and I've said it a million times, when my grandfather started racing back in the 40s, they started at a white line and they ended at a white line, and just run a bunch of circles all day. And you know what? That's what we're still doing in 2016. That's the show. That's what people come out to see. They come out to see those cars. They come out to see those drivers. They come out to see them do things that they can only dream about doing. They come out to see the spectacle of the sport and what the sport's all about. I don't like parity in this, and parity became, people a lot of times talk the arrow, that arrow horse has left the barn. That arrow horse left the barn and sometime in the early 80s, to be honest with you. That's when it raised its head and left the barn. So you're not going to get the arrow issue back under control anytime soon. But I think changing rules to create parity and to level the playing field is wrong. You got to have a lead dog, and you got to have a dog that runs the tail end of the pack. That's the way it is. And your job as a tail end is to work harder and get up to the front. And we've put it into a place now where no matter how hard you work when you're at the back of the pack, if you don't have the finances, you can't get it. So it's become a money game, and that's not good. But you can't take the money away either. But I don't know. You would like to think you could look at the cars and make a change to the cars. You know what? It's not one place. It's a lot of places. We go back, and if I look at the sport, and I mentioned Dale Earnhardt Sr. and my dad and Pearson and guys like that. They were the common man. They were the everyday hero. They were the guy that worked on your car during the day and then went down and beat it around the local short track at night, and then worked their way up from that and kind of made it to the big time, which was Cup racing at the time, and that was the deal. Now you look at the drivers, and they're just not, and it's not a knock on them, they're just not that blue-collar, everyday working guy anymore. There's only a couple of them out there. Harvick and a couple of them are the only guys that really came up that hard way. And it's hard for a guy to buy a ticket to sit in the grandstand and relate to that sometimes, where you felt like, dang, I could have been Richard Petty, or I could have been Dale Earnhardt Sr. It's tough to sit in the grandstand and say, dang, I could have been Jimmy Johnson or Jeff Gordon, because they seem to travel in a different stratosphere sometimes. So, whatever you do or whatever we do, I think we just have to focus on what the game is, and that's motorsports, and that's what's going on there.
How do you think? How fast do you think a guy like Smokey Yunick flip-flops in his grave when some of this stuff happens?
I'm going to tell you something. With some of the rules and some of the things that are said and done these days, those old guys, and all of them are not in heaven. Let me go ahead and say that. Okay? Oh, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and be honest there. Wherever they are, they've tuned out a little bit. I'm telling you, they may watch it every now and then, but they're not true believers and watch it every Sunday anymore.
Kyle Petty, catch him on the pre and post race coverage for today's race at Dover. He's on NBCSN. You can catch him weekly on NASCAR America. Man, we appreciate your time.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 3, and we'll talk with Kenny Schrader. He's going to be at the Cornhusker Classic at I-80 Speedway this Friday and Saturday. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
Joe's Karting is giving away a Hammerhead ATV to one of its members on December 17th. All you have to do is get to Joe's and do some racing. Purchase a 16-lap Hammerhead race for $20 plus tax and you're in. On December 17th, Joe's will open the registration box and one lucky customer will win a Hammerhead GTS 150 or a Hammerhead Torpedo. Get to joeskarting.com for more details and rules. It's time to get to Joe's Karting and find out what all your friends already know.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food. Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
Hey, this is Kurt Busch, driver of the number 41 Haas Automation Chevrolet. You're listening to The Front Stretch.
Heading into turn number 3 here on the front stretch. Halfway through the show, it's time to talk with the man who is going to be making his way to I-80 Speedway this Friday and Saturday for the Cornhusker Classic. Kenny Schrader, finally making your way back to I-80 Speedway. How you doing, sir?
We're doing good. Looking forward to getting back there.
Bringing the Federated Auto Parts Modified over and going to do a little bit of action. How many times has Joe called you to come race this year? Because I know it's been a couple.
Well, I called Joe, told him I wanted to come out there. We enjoyed that show so much last year. We didn't get qualified very good. We had to start towards the back, and we wound up third, and just looking forward to coming back. It's such a nice facility and a lot of good competitors out there, and just fun to be out there.
It's going to be a lot of local guys. This Cornhusker Classic is a pretty big race here locally for a lot of drivers. It's been around for Dirk, he said about 20, 25 years we've been running the Classic?
I'm going to say I think the Classic started in the 80s somewhere, so probably about 30 years.
Well, that is 30 years. Dang, I'm getting old. And so there's going to be about probably 200 and some odd cars, maybe 230 in the pits. It's going to be a full night of racing for you.
Well, I know that. We run the double heat races Friday night, which is a little different format than they've run in the past. I know it works so good out there for them for the Silver Dollar Nationals. I kind of think they started that. We've seen some other tracks adopt that now, and it's really makes for some exciting qualifying procedure, and then get lined up Friday or Saturday for Saturday night, and then if you have some problems, you still got the chance to get through the B. So it'll be tough.
Well, it looks like we're gonna see you up front there. I know we'll see the merch trailer out there, and quite a few old Kenny Schrader shirts. As now the fans will get the word that the Federated Auto Parts Modified will be out there.
Well, there's some real old shirts around because we've gotten pretty old. We've been doing this for a while now.
Well, are you talking old like toga old or?
I don't know. Old. It seems like I'm living in dog years. It just keeps multiplying.
I don't think I ever saw you race a Chariot, though. I don't think. Maybe I missed it.
No. Ben Hur is retired the year before I started.
They're bringing it back, though. They're bringing back another Ben Hur. So
yeah.
Talk about your year. You talk about getting old, but I'm not entirely sure the word I'm not entirely sure the word slow down is in your vocabulary. I realize that's two, but it's been a rough day.
We haven't really slowed down yet. We've been doing a lot of track days where we bring cars out, and some of the Federated Auto Parts members bring out some of their customers, and we let them run. And our hauler that we tow everything with has been in 37 states this year. So we've been pretty busy. We've only run about 62 nights so far, but we're booked up through the middle of November, so we're not anywhere near done yet. So we haven't really slowed down at all. We're probably busier than we've ever been. Maybe haven't got to race quite as many nights, but we're still hitting it.
Hey, when are you going to take that pole barn up at your place there in North Carolina and turn that into a museum and let everybody come peek in there?
No, I don't have any museum stuff. I just got some old junk.
I got up there once. I don't know. We were up. I used to be a Craftsman truck official, and Bob Litzinger took 3 or 4 of us over there, and Joey gave us a tour. That's some neat stuff you got in there.
Yeah, well, we've moved since then. We've got a shop over closer to the Speedway. Instead of having 4 pole barns, we've got one big shop, and then we built a little building out back that's got a lot of that other stuff in it. But we got a pretty nice place now. Anybody can just look it up in the phone book. Just Ken Schrader Concord if they're down and around Charlotte, and welcome to come out to the shop.
Yeah, I was there the last time I quit officiating in 2005, but I was there for the winter meetings, and we came over by your shop, and you were just lettering up your sprint car out there. You had that, I think it was the car you won the USAC title with that you were getting ready to letter up for display out there.
Yeah, I think that was in the new shop. I think that was.
Yeah, that was the new shop.
Yeah. So I guess we've been in there longer than I think.
I was looking through your Facebook page, the Ken Schrader Racing page, and you got to give yourself a little bit more credit. You've got some really cool stuff that you guys have dug through the closet and pulled out some autographed Jeff Gordon stuff and autographed all sorts of cool stuff, even stuff from your old sponsors. So a little bit more credit. You've got some really neat stuff that you give away on that Facebook page quite a bit.
Yeah, I know. My wife and Susan in the office are always working on that, and they're always trying to raise money for some kind of charity, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
It's good that you guys do that. There's a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of fundraising that goes on in this sport, and I absolutely love it. You guys do a fantastic job with helping that stuff out.
Well, hopefully it all works out good for us out there in Nebraska.
One of them I saw that you guys did, and the other thing I really did like about it was that a lot of people do fundraisers for, American Red Cross or the big charities, but it seems like you guys target the little guy a lot more. I saw one of the fundraisers you were trying to help the ARCA minister pay for some gas to get around from track to track because he does it out of his own pocket, which that's kind of one of those things you think nobody ever stops around and helps out those guys. So another kudos to you guys for doing that little stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, it'd be kudos to Ann and Susan because they run that operation. I just get to drive the car, but they keep the doors open.
Does Princess Anne get to come out to the racetrack with you very often?
She goes quite a bit. She's not going to be able to make the Nebraska trip, but she goes quite a bit.
Is she going to make it down to Lakeside again this year? I think I met her at Lakeside last year, and we were there for the October Kansas race.
Well, there's a chance she might because of the ARCA car being there. She likes to go to those races if she can.
Yeah. What's going into the weekend at I-80 Speedway for the Cornhusker Classic, what's you're pulling from your memory from the Silver Dollar Nationals last year, the 2015? Is there anything you could take from that, or does the track and kind of the cars change so much that you got to go out there and figure it out during your hot laps?
Well, last year we were out there for the Cornhusker, and I know we weren't as good as we needed to be the first two nights. We wound up starting 24th, which was a eighth row outside with a 3-wide start. And like I said, we wound up third, but we're actually bringing a different car, same engine, but a different car out this time. Jordan Gabos helped us some last year after that race, and we got pretty happy with one of our new cars. So we're going to bring it out and see if we can do a little better.
Anybody else going to be driving any of your cars, or is it just going to be you with the Federated Auto Parts machine?
Oh, I'll bring my own stuff and I'll just drive it myself.
I know some guys like to bring two or three. Sometimes they're able to bring a second or third car, and so they'll have somebody else drive it just to get a little more experience or a little more shakedown in it.
Yeah, it just looks like a good way to tear up more stuff.
There you go.
With that many cars in the pits, you're probably right.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of modified there, that's for sure.
Well, what else you got going on over the next couple of weeks? I was looking for a schedule on your website, but it looks like you're kind of floating a little bit. Just you said you've got some races scheduled through November?
Well, last weekend we were at Grant City, Illinois for a 3-day modified race. 75, 80, and 73 car count. A lot of competition.
Wow.
Rossburg, Ohio on there to a 3-day show. Then Nebraska, then Lakeside, Kansas, then down to Charlotte for a UMP race down there, then back up to Iowa for the end of the month, and then I think down to Alabama for the first weekend of November.
Yeah, Granite City, that's kind of your old stomping grounds, isn't it?
Well, it's right there across the river from St. Louis, and Kevin and Tammy Gundecker have taken over that place a number of years ago. They purchased it, and they have done a phenomenal job. This is the 12th running of Mod Mania, they call it, and they had over 70 cars every night, had 80 the one night, and just excellent competition. Really put on a good show.
Well, we look forward to having you at the Cornhusker Classic. You can get tickets in advance, i80speedway.com. Come down and see Ken Schrader. Bring out your favorite Ken Schrader toga, and maybe he'll even autograph it at the end of the night.
We'll do whatever anybody needs. That's no problem.
Appreciate your time, Ken. Have a good time this weekend.
All right. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks, Eddie.
Bye, guys.
I wonder if we can get togas made up with the Federated Auto Parts on the back.
Well, there'd be a little copyright issue with that maybe, but
they wouldn't mind, would they?
It's hard telling anymore what people want to sue you for.
That's true. That's especially when they're like, wait, Dan Taylor put Federated Auto Parts? No, sue him to oblivion, please. They don't want me associated with much of anything.
Yeah, we'll sue him for $12. Hopefully we can collect.
Can I get a payment plan on that? All right, we're going to wrap the show up. We'll be back here in turn number 4 with a preview of Dover and Charlotte. We'll be back on the
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100 plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
And we're back with Kansas Speedway, who is still sorry.
That's right. I'm, really sorry to the coworkers of my fans who have to listen to all that loud talking on Monday. And sorry my drink prices won't turn your weekend into a loan application. And sorry the chase for the championship is more exciting than your last date.
The chase is on as the Sprint Cup Series Championship rolls in Sunday, October 16th for the Hollywood Casino 400 at Kansas Speedway. Tickets at kansasspeedway.com.
You're welcome.
It's checkers or wreckers as we enter turn 4 on the front stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs.
Hey, this is Ryan Newman, driver of the number 31 Caterpillar Chevrolet, and you're listening to the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch. Rolling into turn number 4, just about ready to wrap everything up. If you missed any part of today's show, you can go back and listen to our New Hampshire recap, our conversation with Kyle Petty, and our brief conversation with Ken Schrader, who's going to be at the Cornhusker Classic this coming weekend at I-80 Speedway. Go over to the Joe's Karting YouTube page, and you can pick up the full broadcast of the show, and along with a lot of our other conversations we've had in the past with some of these guys. Take a chance, search Front Stretch and Dave Despain, and you're going to have probably one of the better interviews we've done in the 5-6 years. We've talked to so many drivers, and nearly all the shows are up on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, search the Front Stretch, and then whatever driver you want to hear from, and or the guest we found on the show that day, and more than likely we've had them on there. All right, let's talk about Dover and the action for today. Will be on the big screens at Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch. Coverage on NBCSN kicks off at 12:30 today. Green flag set to wave just after 1 o'clock. Make sure you get your picks in on time. And then next Saturday night, the races will be on the big screens again at Quaker Steak and Lube for the Charlotte race that's going to go down Charlotte night. Talk about Dover, the Monster Mile, just the race this time last year. Kevin Harvick walked into one heck of a pickle. It was as plain and simple as it came down for that driver of the 4. Win and you move on.
Win or go home.
Finish second, and you're done for the year, at least competing for the championship. He was able to pull out the win. Strongest car, led 355 of the 400 laps. Second place, Kyle Busch, followed by Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jamie McMurray, and Eric Almirola. Sixth on back was Casey Kane, Matt Kenseth, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kyle Larson, and Joey Logano round out the top 10. We noted it in turn number 1. Jimmy Johnson had a small parts failure, and he finished 41st. Tony Stewart finished 26th. Austin Dillon, 23rd. Ryan Newman, 19th. Brad Keselowski, 16th. So most of your chase drivers right up there in the top 20, top 15. With it being an elimination race today, there's a lot of pressure on these guys.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure. And, I mean, that pressure comes from mostly just from the driver and the owner. But, I mean, you've got some sponsor pressures because some of these contracts are probably running out. And you want to make sure and get that sponsor signed for next year. You know, I'm not sure if there's a lot of driver contracts out there besides Ryan Newman, who doesn't have, that's why he was so upset at Richmond with not making the chase.
And the more we're hearing out of RCR as far as their 2017 lineup, it sounds more and more like Ryan's out of a ride.
Right, yeah.
Which is unfortunate because a lot of 2017 rides are already locked up. There's not a lot of places for Ryan to go.
Well, they're going to be moving around and shuffling, but like you said, there's not too many places for him to go. It's also, I think, the most pressure, and, I mean, it's not like Chris Buescher, who's a win-or-go-home candidate at this time, but Tony Stewart, it's going to be his last trip to Dover, and if he doesn't really put on, I mean, he's almost in the win-or-go-home spot, too, to keep his chance for a championship here on his last season alive. And for anybody that didn't get a chance, go over to our Facebook page. We put up an article about Tony Stewart over there, and it is a fantastic read. Take a few minutes. It's not a real big article, but a lot of good info from Tony on there.
And frankly, I think there's a lot of great info on our Facebook page. Well, we got a couple minutes left before we get to the Dover breakdown. One of the big news stories this week that came out was the Iowa State Fairground has suspended operations indefinitely. They will not be racing in 2017. And that's going to leave a big hole in that area for a lot of drivers who like to make that home on, I believe they race on Saturday nights. Or were they Friday nights?
Friday nights, I believe, is where they race over there. And
yeah, because they wouldn't compete with Knoxville.
Yeah, and it's an all-IMCA show. And because, you see some guys. I know Paul Glendenning ran over there every year. He was the track champ at Adams County this year in late models. I'm not sure who else from the area is running over there weekly, but...
Well, they'd worked out an agreement. Tony Morrow, who'd been running that track along with some other guys, had worked out an agreement with Iowa State Fair to run for a few more years, but the fair notified the racing board and the guys who were putting on the racing that basically they're not wanted anymore, which that's been writing on the wall for a long time. Every time we pass by that track, we talk about the struggles that track has, because being located smack dab in the middle of Des Moines in a 10 p.m. sound ordinance.
A 10 p.m. curfew or something that they've got going on there and stuff like that they fight. And starting on Friday is always kind of tough. You can't start your show at 6 o'clock like you could on Saturday or Sunday because people work and got to travel, to get to the track. So, yeah, it's a tough gig there.
Unfortunate, but it's just the way things go. Little Sunset Speedway was the same thing. It was starting to face a lot of encroachment into its area with residents, and so there was a lot of pressure for the track to shut down, and eventually the Kellys just said, we got to do it.
Well, I mean, there was some money that switched hands there.
It was,
shut down. They basically they just sped up the inevitable.
Craig Kelly said it came down to two things. We were either going to hold on to the track for another 5 or 6 years and get what's the term? The city will
eminent domain.
There you go.
Type deal.
And we'll get like $200,000 out of the track, or we'll take this guy's bid and get $1 million out of the track.
Well, they still own the property.
Yeah.
That's why nothing's happened to the property.
That's right.
They got paid just to close.
They paid him just to close. All right, let's talk about Dover real quick. We ran out of time talking about some other news. The Monster Mile today, it can eat up a car real quick.
Oh, if you ever talk to a driver, Kevin Harvick, there was an article on his race page the other day on Facebook talking about how it feels like when you go down the straightaways into turns 1 and 3, it's like you jump off a cliff. And that's how Brendan Gaughan described it the first time he raced there. He goes, it's like jumping off a 10-story building. You kind of just free fall. You get that empty feeling in your stomach. And then when you come out of 2 or 4, you actually drive uphill, and that's part of the tricky part of this track is keeping that traction as you're going up the hill onto the flat surface, because you kind of crest a little knob there, and that's where a lot of the banging and beating goes on those cars coming out of 4, coming down the front straightaway against the wall.
It'll be interesting. Race coverage kicks off NBCSN and MRN at 12:30 today. Green flag set to be about 1 o'clock. Get down to Joe's Karting, do a little bit of racing. Head over to Quaker Steak and Lube, the official watering hole of the front stretch, and grab yourself something good to eat and something cool to drink. We'll do it live next weekend as we will recap the action from Dover, who got eliminated. And then we'll talk about Charlotte, and we'll also bring you some results from the Cornhusker Classic. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll do it again live next weekend. This has been the Front Stretch, presented by Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.